Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Wasim Khan, an instructor of your project planning and management course. As you know that in the previous two lectures, we have discussed the course outline or the course overview. We have also discussed the reference materials or the books or the preparatory materials or the articles regarding this particular course. And we have also talked about the project, what actually a project is. We have defined it in details. We have also discussed different examples or sizes of the projects and the reasons behind um, undertaking a particular project. Moreover, we have discussed the project management, what actually the project management is, and the project management context, in which we have discussed the portfolio and portfolio management, um, program and program management, and we have also discussed the relationship between the projects or programs within the um, portfolio. We have also discussed about the strategic planning in project planning and management, and we have also discussed the difference between the operations and project management. Moreover, we have further divided the project into different sub-projects, okay? And we have also discussed that why we actually divide the product into different parts. Today we are going to continue this chapter from the roles of a project manager. So we will discuss the roles of a project management manager. Sorry, who is a project manager? A project manager is the person who is assigned by the performing organization to achieve the project objective. Okay, so obviously the project will have different objectives, and for achieving those objectives, the organization usually assigned a person, a person who is able to perform a project more efficiently, and that person is called the project manager. In addition to any specific skills or the general management proficiencies that are required for a particular project, there are some basic characteristics that usually a project management managers have. And those characteristics are knowledge, performance, and personal characteristics. So knowledge characteristic means that what the project manager knows about the project management. So knowledge is actually the knowledge regarding a particular project, the processes and different area within a particular project, and how to face different risks, different challenges, and to solve different problems within a particular project. So that is actually a project, the knowledge characteristic. The second one is the performance characteristics. So performance characteristic mean that what the project manager is able to do or accomplish while applying their project management knowledge. Once the project manager has a project management knowledge, then we have to look into the capability of a project manager, that how a project manager perform a project, how the project manager is applying his or her knowledge regarding a particular project or the project management. So that is actually the performance. And personal characteristics mean the behavior, the attitude, and the leadership characteristics of the project manager. These are some of the basic and the most important characteristics like attitude, the personality, and leadership of a project manager. So that was all about the role of the project manager. So there are a number of responsibilities and roles of a project manager, but we have actually categorized those responsibilities into knowledge, performance, and personal. Let's talk about the project management office. We call it the PMO as well. So, a project management office is an organizational body, it is an organizational entity that assigns responsibilities related to the centralized and coordinated management of a project. Sometimes an organization, a single organization perform multiple projects. Okay, so there is a organizational body or entity within a particular organization who is responsible for the centralized and coordinated management of all those projects. Okay, so the responsibilities of the PMO range from either from direct management of the project to the support functions of the to the project management. So the PMO can have number of responsibilities that may include the direct management of the project or providing the project management support functions. So there are a number of the functions of the project management office, but let's discuss some primary functions of the PMO. The first one is managing shared resources across all the projects. So, when an organization is performing different projects, then obviously those projects require, the human resource or the materials, etc. So, or other, resources. So, the PMO is responsible for managing the resources across all the projects. Another function of PMO is to identify and develop a project management methodology, the best practice or practices and standards. So obviously we can have the project management methodologies or the techniques or the best practices or the standards on which we have to perform a project. Okay, so identifying and developing those methodologies, practices and standards are one of the functions of PMO. Another function is coaching, mentoring, training, and oversight. So obviously, the project include the human resource management as well, or the human resources, or the workers, or the labor. So the PMO office has the responsibility to coach those HR mentor them, or train them. Okay, give them keep them up to date regarding the technology or other skills, and then oversight and monitor them as well. Another function is to monitor compliance with the project management standards, policies, and procedures. For project management, we can have a number of standards, policies, and procedures. So it is the responsibility of PMO to monitor whether the project team is following the standards, policies, and procedures while managing the project. So that is also the major function of the project management. Now let's talk about developing and managing. So developing and managing project policies, procedures, and templates, that is again a very important function of the project management office. And at the end, I would say last but not the least, coordinating communication across the projects. For example, if an organization is undertaking three projects, So it is the responsibility of PMO to coordinate among the projects, to coordinate communication, to keep a smooth communication across the projects, and that is, the communication among different projects or different departments within an organization is extremely important if you want to achieve the objectives and goals, efficiently. So that was all about the project management office. Till now, we have discussed what actually the project is, what is project management, what is portfolio management, program management. We have discussed the operation management and divisions in a project, and we have also discussed the roles of the project manager and project management office. Now, um, let's move toward one of the most important topics, and that is project life cycle. So, what is project life cycle? Project life cycle is actually a collection of generally sequential and sometimes overlapping project phases. So, in project life cycle, in project life cycle, we can have a number of project phases, obviously. So usually, the project in project life cycle, that these phases are sequential and sometimes overlapping. Sequential mean that, for example, a project life cycle has four phases. So the sequential here means that phase two will start once the phase one is completed. Similarly, phase three will start once the phase one and phase two are fully completed. So this is sequential, like phase one starts and it ends, and after ending the phase one, the phase two starts, and so on. So that is called sequential um, phases. And overlapping phases mean that the a phase starts without completion of the previous phase. For example, when phase two of the project starts without completing, the phase one, that means that phase one is still running and you have started the phase two. So that is called the overlapping project phases. So project life cycle is a collection of usually or generally sequential and sometimes overlapping project phases. The life cycle provides the basic framework for managing the project. Obviously, we have to, in project management, we have to manage the project. And for that, we need the basic framework, and that the basic framework is usually given by the project life cycle. Okay, and that is regardless of the specific work involved. The names and numbers of phases are determined. The name and number for phases are determined by three things: management and control needs, or the nature of the project. Based on the nature of the project, the names or the number of phases are determined, or based on the area of application, we can determine the names and number of phases. So characteristic, let's talk about the characteristic of the project life cycle. All projects can be mapped to the following lifestyle structure. So usually the project life cycle have this structure that you can see on the screen. The first one is starting the project. Obviously, we have to start the project and then organize and preparing and then carrying out the project work and closing the project. So we are going to discuss this in the next slide. But let me tell you something that for every phase, there is an input and output. And an output of the previous phase will be an input for the next phase. Let's talk about it, and inshallah you will understand it very easily. So this is the generic life cycle, and I'm going to explain this graph. This graph is important for because if you want to understand the project life cycle, then you need to understand this graph. And obviously, this graph is a very simple graph as well. So this is the graph that represents the project life cycle. And in this graph, we have cost and staffing levels um, that are required for completing a project, and that is on the y-axis. On the x-axis, we can have time, the time for each phase or the duration for each phase. And here on the same y-axis, we can, sorry, x-axis, we can have the project management outputs. That means that the outputs we usually get from or at the end of each phase. For example, let's start with the project life cycle graph, and inshallah, then you will understand each and everything. So here, at this point, you can see this cursor. At this point, the project starts. This is the starting of the project. Now, the project starts and, it continues. You can see this line, the dashed or dotted lines. It continues to till this point. And at this point, the starting phase of the project ends. Okay, and when the starting phase, starting the project, when this phase ends at this point, then we get an output, and that output is the project charter. Okay, so project charter is an output we get as a result of starting the project phase. Okay, what is project charter? I have already discussed it in the class, but let me tell you, define it again. Project charter is actually an authorized document for the project, or it is a document that authorizes the project. Okay, so we will discuss it in the project integration management, but you should just know what actually the project charter is. And project charter is actually a document that authorizes the project. So that means a project charter is an output of this phase, and the phase is starting the project. Now, at the end of starting the project, we will have the next phase, and that phase is called organizing and preparing. So the output for the first phase was project charter, but now this project charter is an input, an input for the second phase, and that phase is organizing and preparing. So the organizing and preparing, or planning for the project, that what actually the project will include, how to carry out different processes within a particular project in order to achieve the objectives, and what are the goals and objectives of the project. And this phase is at this particular point that you can see here. So organizing and preparing phase is the second phase that ends here. And at the end of this phase, we get an output, and that output is called project management plan. And project management plan has usually all of the details of the project, that what are actually things that are included in the project, and how to and the processes and the procedures and the techniques or the skills required, and how to perform those processes in order to achieve the project. Now, at this point, when the second phase ends, the third phase starts, and that phase is called carrying out the work. So we have to carrying out the work, or we have to execute all of those processes that have been planned in this second phase. So, as you know, that management plan is an output for organizing and planning. It will be an input for the third phase, and that phase is carrying out the project. So we are carrying out the project based on what we have planned, and we have the project management plan now. And when we reach here, that means that at this point we are producing the product or service, or the outcome or results. And these results, outcome of, or services are actually the objectives or goals of the project. Now this point represents the end of this phase, and this phase ends when we get an output, and those outputs are called accepted deliverables. Accepted deliverable means the products or the services or the outcomes or results we need to produce as a result of the project. So once we have achieved those deliverables, we need to close the project because we have achieved the goals and objectives. Now, from this point, we have to start the next phase, and that phase is closing the project, and the project is closing down. So, closing the project is not very simple. Okay, it's not just close the project. In closing the project, we have to prepare the number of documents, regarding the whole project. And when we achieve those project documents, the project will automatically close. So that is, the project life cycle from start to end. Now let's talk about the relationship between the product and project life cycle. So we have already discussed the project life cycle. Okay, now the product life cycle. The product life cycle consists of generally sequential and non-overlapping product phases, and these phases are determined by the manufacturing and control need of the organization. So the difference here is that if you remember that in project life cycle, the phases were sequential and sometimes overlapping. But now in you can see in product life cycle, the phases are sequential and non-overlapping. Okay. Now, project life cycles occur in one or more phases of a product life cycle. That means that in a product life cycle, when we are producing the product and when we are using the product, a product life cycle means that producing the starting from the production of producing that product, and while using and disposal of their particular product, or the expiration of their particular product. So, within one phase of the product life cycle, we can have a number of the project life cycles. Okay, so the development of new product could be a project on its own. So we can have a number of projects within a particular product life cycle. How? For example, if you are producing a cell phone, okay, so each part within a cell phone, or each chip or circuit within a production of each chip or circuit in a particular cell phone would be a separate project. Okay, and when we assemble all of those chips and parts, then at a result we will get the whole cell phone, and that cell phone or smartphone will be a big project itself, and that would be a new project itself. So alternatively, an existing product might benefit from a project to add a new functions or features, or a project might be created to develop a new model. So many phases of the product life cycle might be run as project. For example, within a project we can have within a product life cycle we can have a number of projects, and examples are performing a feasibility study. If you are performing when you are performing how feasible our product would be and how feasible our project would be, or the outcomes of the project would be. So that is again a separate project. Or conducting the market research for a particular project is again, you know for a particular product. Uh, for producing a product, you need to conduct the market research first. Okay. And that is again a project. And running an advertising campaign for your product, that is again can be a separate project. Similarly, installing a product, that means that once you have a product and now you are going to install them, so installing a product is again a separate project. So you can say within the product lifecycle we have a number of the projects. Now let's talk about the project phases. So project phases are actually, what are project phases? So project phases are divisions within a project where extra control is needed to effectively manage the completion of a major deliverable. So why we divide the project into project phases? Because we need to perform the project more efficiently, and to get the objectives or to achieve the objectives or goals more smoothly. Okay, so that's why we are actually dividing the project into the project phase. Project phases are typically completed sequentially, but that's not necessary. Project phases can overlap in some project situations as well. Okay, so we will discuss it in the next slides. The phase structure allows the project to be segmented into logical subsets for ease of management, planning, and control. So here you can see a diagram, and in this diagram we have the project phase. This is just a single project phase. Remember that initiating process, planning process, monitoring and controlling process, executing process, and closing process, these are not the project phases. These are the project process groups. Okay, so these are the process group. These are not the phases. This is the whole phase that you can see. This whole diagram here is the phase. This is a single phase. So, for example, you can see here, this is one approach to managing the installation of a telecommunication network. If you are going to install a telecommunication network, for example, and that requires a single phase, then this would be a single phase for that particular project. So, regardless of the number of phases comprises a project, all phases have similar characteristics. So, all phases will have a similar characteristics, um, regardless the number of phases that a project include. So, the close of a phase ends with some form of transfer or handoff of the work product produced as the phase deliverable. This phase end represents a natural point to reassess the effort underway and change or terminate the project if necessary. These points are referred to as phase exits, milestones, and phase gates, decision gates, stage gates, or the kill points. So this slide means I would like to make this slide simple for you, that a project can have a number of phases, and those phases can be sequential, or those phases might be overlapping phases as well. Now, I hope you know the sequential and overlap phases I have discussed in the previous slides. When one phase of the project ends, then that phase will, give us some output. And as I told you that the output of the previous phase will be an input for the next phase. Okay, now the ending of any phase, when the phase ends, so that point at which the phase ends is called phase exit or milestone or phase gates or decision gates or stage gates or kill points. Okay, so let's discuss the three basic types of face-to-face relationships. You have to understand this simple slide so that you can understand the relationships, or I would say the phases or the structure of organization. So the first type of face-to-face relationship is called sequential relationship, and I have already discussed this one. Sequential relationship is a relationship where a phase can only start once the previous phase is complete, and the objective of this relationship is to reduce the uncertainty, okay, and to eliminate options for reducing the schedules. Okay, so these are the basic, you can say these may be the basic outcomes or results of the sequential relationship. An overlapping relationship is a relationship where the phase starts prior or before the completion of the previous one. So it will increase the risk. This relationship will increase risk, and it can result in revoke because you may commit some errors or the mistakes, and you have to perform that work again. So obviously we know that the sequential tasks, performing the task sequentially is very um, good as compared to the overlapping. Why? That is because that we complete the first step or the first phase, and then we start the next phase. So that becomes very easy for us as well. But sometimes we need to overlap those phases, and we need to overlap the phases more carefully because it may increase the risk and it can result in revoke. So an iterative or repetitive relationship where only one phase is planned at any given time, and the planning for the next phase is carried out as work progresses on the current phase. That means that, for example, you are performing the phase. So the phase you are performing, going to perform the phase one. So phase one will starts, okay, and you are performing the phase one. Now, if you are planning if you want to start the phase two after completion of the phase one, then you need to plan for the phase two during running of the phase one. Okay, यानी phase one हो रहा होता है, परफॉर्म हो रहा होता है, और आप उसके साथ साथ phase two भी जो है आप उसको परफॉर्म प्लान करते हैं. ठीक है, so that is the iterative relationship, and it is useful in largely undefined, uncertain, or rapidly changing or dynamic environments, and it can reduce the ability to provide long-term planning. So this is the face-to-face relationship. You can see this relationship here, that we have the sequential relationship. You can see in this example of cleaning up a hazardous waste site. For example, you are working in a company, and you have the task to clean up the hazardous waste from the site. So that can be a sequential process. Like in the first phase, this is the first phase, which is called facility decommissioning. You have to decommission the facility. In the second phase, you have to remove the waste and clean up. And in the third waste, you have to landscape. So this is a sequential relationship. Okay, this is an example of sequential relationship. Now the second example of building a new factory, for example, you are going to build a new factory, then that would need the overlapping phases. Like you can see here that we have one phase and the second phase. So the first phase is designing phase and the second phase is construction phase. So before complete completion of the design phase, you have started the construction phase. So this is called the overlapping phase. So stakeholders, let's talk about the project stakeholders. Who are stakeholders? Stakeholders are persons or organizations, for example, customers, sponsors, or the performing organization, or the public, who are actively involved in the project. Those persons or organizations who are actively involved in the project or whose interests may be positively or negatively affected by the performance or the completion of the project, that those people or organizations are called the project stakeholders. So who are the project stakeholders? Project stakeholders are the people or the organizations that who are actively involved in the project and whose interests may be positively or negatively affected by the completion of the project or the performance of the project. So stakeholders may also exert influence over the project. Yes, every stakeholder has an influence on the project, its deliverables or outcomes, and the project team members. So every stakeholders, either the stakeholder is the project manager or the customer or the sponsor or the investors or other functional managers, every stakeholder will have an impact or influence over the project or the product or services you are producing or the whole or the other or on other project team members. So the project management team must identify both internal and in external stakeholders in order to determine the project requirements and expectations of all parties involved. So if you are if you want to determine the project requirements in the planning process, the project management team needs to identify all of the stakeholders, either the internal or external stakeholders. So project manager must manage the influence of the various stakeholders in relation to the project requirements to ensure a successful outcome. Some stakeholders benefit from a successful project, while other stakeholders perceives negative outcomes from a project success. So that depends on, all different stakeholders will have different requirements. So for project management team, it is necessary to, balance the requirements of all the stakeholders. An important part of the project manager's responsibility is to manage the stakeholder expectations. And as I told you, that the major responsibility of the project management team or especially the project manager is to manage or balance the stakeholders' expectations or requirements or needs. The stakeholders often have very different or conflicting objectives, and part of the project manager's responsibility is to balance their interests. So these are the project stakeholders, you can see here. And this shaded or the gray stakeholders are the most important stakeholders. And other are also important, but these are the key stakeholders. So the project stakeholders include the sponsor, who is or are sponsoring the project, and the project team. Project team include project management team, project manager, and other project team members. Some other project stakeholders are portfolio manager, program manager, project management office or PMO, operations management, functional managers, sellers, business partners, customers. These all are these project stakeholders. So let's talk about the organizational influences on project management. Different things like organizational culture, style, and structure influences how products are performed. So an organization's degree of project manager maturity, management maturity, and its project management system can also influence the project. Organizational cultures and styles. Let's talk about the organizational cultures and styles. Organizational cultures, or the cultural norms, include common knowledge regarding how to approach getting the work done. What means are considered acceptable for getting the work done, and who is influential in facilitating the work getting done. So most organizations have developed unique cultures that manifest in numerous ways, including but not limited to shared visions, values, norms, beliefs, and expectations. Okay, they have different policies, methods, and procedures. They have different view of authority relationships and work ethics and work hours. So let's talk about the organizational structure first. Organizational structure is defined as the set of formal tasks assigned to individuals in departments, formal reporting relationships, including lines of authority, decision responsibility, and number of hierarchical levels, and the span of managers' control, and the design of systems to ensure effective coordination of employees across departments. So this is actually the organizational structure consists of these three points. Organizational structure is an enterprise environmental factor which can affect the availability of resources and influence how the projects are conducted. So organization structure is an enterprise environmental factor that affect the ability of the availability of resources, and that also influence how projects are conducted. So organizational structures range from functional to projectized. That means that we have functional organizational structure, the matrix structures, and the projectized organization structure. So you can see on this screen that we have here the functional organization. So functional organization is one of the types of organizational structure. So what is functional organization? It is a hierarchical structure where each employee has one clear superior. So you can see here that each employee has one clear superior. Each employee has one clear superior. Okay, and that superior is function manager for the staff. You can see here. Okay, and each functional manager have again they have uh, a clear superior, and that is called chief executive. So staff members are grouped by specialty. You can see that functional manager, this can be uh, the functional manager of accounting, for example. So that means that all of the staff are, accounting staff. And the functional manager of manufacturing means that all the staff under this, function manager would relate it to the manufacturing. Okay. So staff members are grouped by specialty such as production, marketing, engineering, and accounting. Specialties may be further subdivided into functional organizations such as mechanical and electrical engineering. Each department in a functional organization will do its project work independent of other departments. So each department, for example, this department will perform its project work independent of these two departments. Okay, so We call it the functional organization because the managers are usually the functional managers, and these tasks are regarding to a particular functions. Okay, like production, marketing, engineering, and accounting. Projectized organization, as the name suggests, that the projectized organizational structure is more, diverted towards the project. Team members are often co-located. Most of the organization resources are involved in project work, and project managers have a great deal of independence and authority. So usually a project manager, there are, for example, an organization performing different projects, and each project will have a project manager, and under a project manager will have a particular staff. Okay, so that's why we call it the projectized organization. Projectized organizations often have one department for have one or more department, but these groups either have manager or provide support services to organization. And this is the matrix, which is the third type of organization structure. It is a blend, a mix of the functional and project types. So you can see here that in this figure, we can have it is a function, it is a mix of the functional and projectized characteristics. Weak matrices maintain many of the organization and the project managers. So matrix organization, we can have the three types of matrix organization. This is the weak, matrix organization. This is the, the balanced, the strong. Sorry, this one is the strong matrix organization, where you can see that we can have we in weak we have only the functional manager, and that functional manager is controlling the functions as well as the projects. The gray boxes are related to the project activities. Okay, so functional managers have to perform two works. But in strong matrices, they have many of the characteristics of the projectized organization and can have full-time project managers. यानी you can see here that we have the project managers as well. वहाँ पे सिर्फ वीक में सिर्फ functional managers थे जो कि दोनों काम परफॉर्म कर रहे थे, project की भी और functions की भी. But you can see here that for the functional managers जो है वो अपनी functions की perform कर रही हैं, लेकिन जो project managers हैं वो फिर जो project related staff है उनको जो है manage कर रहा है. और इन सब प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर्स की जो है, हर एक प्रोजेक्ट का जो प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर है उसका फिर एक मैनेजर होता है. वी कॉल इट मैनेजर ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर. और अगर आप बैलेंस मैट्रिक्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशन देखें तो ये एक्चुअली एक कॉम्बिनेशन है, एक बैलेंस है बिटवीन द strong and weak matrix organization. So while the balanced matrix organization recognizes the need for a project manager, so we can have just a single project manager who is, I would say, controlling the project staff. And this also have more functional managers as well. So let's talk about the organizational process assets. Organizational process assets include any or all processes related assets. Organization process assets include any or all process related assets from any or all of the organizations that are involved in a project. So the organizational process assets क्या हो सकती है? The organizational process includes formal and informal plans, policies, procedures, and guidelines. So the process assets also include organization knowledge bases, like lessons learned from a particular project or for a particular risk, and historical information that are, available regarding the similar projects. So organizational process assets may include completed schedules, the risk data, and earned value data. So we will discuss the risk data and earned value data, inshallah, in the coming chapters. You just need to understand what are actually the organizational process assets and what the organizational process assets include. Updating and aiding to the organizational process assets throughout the project are generally the responsibility of the project team members. And we have now the enterprise environmental factors. So EEF or enterprise environmental factors refer to both the internal and external environmental factors that surround or influence the project's success. So those internal or external environmental factors that are influencing, that impact, that affect the project's success, those factors are called enterprise environmental factors. And these factors may come from any or all of the enterprises that are involved in the project. A project may have involved, number of enterprises may involve in project. So these factors, the enterprise environmental factors, come from any or all of the enterprises involved in the project and are considered as inputs to most planning processes. So yeah, the enterprise environmental factors include but are not limited to the organizational culture. Organizational culture is an enterprise environmental factor. Organization structure is enterprise environmental factor. Similarly, the processes, or the government or industry standards are the enterprise environmental factors. The infrastructure, any existing facilities, या जो capital equipment, that is also an environmental factor. Some of other environmental enterprise environmental factors are the human resources or the skills or the disciplines and the knowledge the human resources have. And the company work authorization systems is also an enterprise environmental factor. Similarly, market conditions like political climate or political instability, या जो commercial databases है, ठीक है, that can be again या other जो marketplace conditions हो सकती है. For example, धरना है किसी political उन्होंने को पार्टी ने एक धरना रखा है, सो वो इफेक्ट करती है, ठीक है, आपके प्रोजेक्ट को, ठीक है, अवेलेबिलिटी टू द अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ रिसोर्सेज टू द प्रोजेक्ट को वगैरह वगैरह. सो प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजमेंट इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम जो है वो भी एंटरप्राइज एनवायरमेंटल फैक्टर्स हैं. Let's talk about the project team. Project team includes project manager, project management staff, and other project team members. Other project team members are those members who carry out the work, but they are not necessarily involved in the management of the project. Okay, they perform the management related, or supportive work, but they are not necessarily involved in the management of the project. And they comprised of the other team members are comprised of individuals from different groups with specific subject matter knowledge or skill set. So project team includes different roles such as the project management staff, the members of the team who perform project management activities such as scheduling and budgeting. And who are the project staff? And project staff are the members of the team who carry out the work of creating the project deliverables. Project deliverables mean the project products or the service or the outcome that you are going to produce from the project as a result of the project. Okay, supporting experts may also be a part of the project team. And supporting experts perform activities that are required to develop or execute the project management plan. Okay, like contracting or financial management, logistics and legal or engineering or quality control. We can have the user or customer representatives as well in the project team. Who are the user or customer representatives? So as the name suggests, these are the members of the organization who will accept deliverables or the products or the services or the results of the project. They may be assigned to act as a representative or license. Okay, so to ensure proper coordination, advise on requirements and validate the acceptability of the project results, is the responsibility of the user and customer representative. Similarly, sellers are actually the external companies that enter into a contractual agreement to provide components or services that are necessary for the project. For example, you need some material for the project, so the external companies or the supplier will provide those materials to you. If you need a human resource or the labor, for example, so different contractors will come and they will have a contractual agreement with you, and they will provide you services. And similarly, we can have other contractors or the sellers as well. And business partner members. So business partner members are members of business partners organizations may be assigned as members of the project team to ensure one thing, and that is the proper coordination. So okay, project composition of the project teams. Project team composition varies, okay, based on factors such as organizational culture, scope, and location. तो इनके base पे आप project team बना सकते हैं. Project manager may be the team's line manager with full authority over its member, and project manager may have little or no direct organizational authority over the team members. It depends. All or majority of the project team members are assigned to work full time of the project, and the project team may be co-located or virtual and usually reports directly to the project manager. So these are the simple things. I don't need to explain it because these sentences are very clear, and I hope you will understand it very easily. And the part-time, so the dedicated project team members are actually are the majority of the project team members who are assigned to full-time work on the project. And part-time project team members are some projects are established as temporary additional work. Any project manager and project team members working on the project while continuing to carry out their normal functions as well. And part-time team members may also be assigned to more than one project at a time. So that's the end of the this lesson or chapter, and we have discussed the project life cycle, project versus product life cycle, what actually the project phases and the phase-to-phase relationships are, who are project stakeholders. We have discussed the project organization influences such as culture, style, and organization structures like projectized organization, functional and matrix organization on the project management. We have discussed the organization process assets and the enterprise environmental factors as well. So that's the end of the chapter. If you have any questions, please ask me.